All right, we'll call that a minute. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to DAG's March monthly meeting. My name is Eli Storch. I chair the Design Advocacy Group. It's a pleasure to see so many of you here today. So we are in our year of moving and being in different locations than ever before. So stick with us. Keep a close eye on our website, designadvocacy.org, to see where things are going and what events are happening. We try to spell it out as best as we can on there for everybody. So we like to all be together. It's great to have everyone in person. So one of the things we do to start off here, since we're not going to go around and everyone's going to introduce themselves individually, is that I'm going to put a minute on the watch that I'm not wearing, and you're going to reach out to the people within an arm's reach of you, say hi, connect, introduce yourselves, make sure you know who you're sitting with. So come back here in about a minute, okay? Go for it. All right, let's start wrapping those up a little bit. Bring yourselves back up here. All right. Close those conversations out. Bring ourselves back up here. We'll get into the program. A lot of energy tonight. People are usually a little quicker to turn around and come back up to focus. Okay, if you can hear me, stop talking. Maybe I need more volume on this microphone. All right, well, that was energetic. Thank you, everybody. Please keep those conversations going after the session and stay connected, and it's wonderful to have everybody here today. So as we get started, the way we always do here at DAG, for those of us who are new today, we're going to go through some advocacy items, some updates, some things that are happening. If you have anything that you want to share, raise your hand. I'll shout you out. You have a chance to let us know important issues, exhibitions, all sorts of things that may be happening that you want to share with us. Feel free to raise a hand and let me know. So we're going to get into what we have here. As a reminder, we used to be an off-the-record event space. During COVID, we started going on Zoom and recording those videos since anyone could be recording them, and we moved to an on-the-record format. So we do have all of our events on our website. If you go to the past events, you can click on those, go to the YouTube videos, and watch all of those, share all of those as much as you want. So a few advocacy items. Again, thinking about anything you want to share, feel free to raise a hand at any point. So things that are going on. The West Washington Historic District designation was struck down by a judge on the latest appeal. So it's a strange situation. We had the opportunity to connect with Paul Steinke and Hannah Stark from the Preservation Alliance, who are closely monitoring the next round of appeals, because there's thicker than a phone booth or a phone book's worth of data and evidence and support behind this nomination. So it's a very strange situation we're in. I think we're all cautiously optimistic that will be reinstated, but there will be more to see and say and do on that in the not too distant future. A sad one. For a really wonderful building, William Way is planning to demolish their building for a new, more modern structure. There are discussions ongoing again about that, seeing if there's any ways to encourage, incentivize, do something else to maintain that building. There will be more on that one to come, but that is a current decision that's been made, and we're monitoring that, and we'll keep you posted as things progress there. Market East, we've talked a lot, and a lot of ink has been spilled about the demolitions on Market East and the planning process on Market East, but it's been announced that the demolitions will be delayed until at least after the World Cup and after a lot of the events this summer, which I think is a very good thing and gives us some sort of timeline to get a plan in place before just wanton demolition. But they have announced that they are putting together a group to do some pop-ups, to do some engagement and some interaction on Market East, which was something that we advocated for, and I think a lot of people advocated for, and made a lot of sense before the demolitions were announced. So it's nice to see that that's happening. I know that there have been folks who've presented here. I believe Brian Phillips is involved with his team, and they're getting involved with whatever those pop-ups are going to be. There's still not a lot of clarity about it, but it is good to see that that is moving and that there will be something there on Market East to re-energize those structures this summer and throughout those events. An odd one, kind of came out of left field, was the desire from the administration to begin building modular construction in the city. Doesn't make a ton of sense from my perspective. We haven't talked about it in depth within the DAG community, but modular housing is becoming more and more of a trend. However, the economics of it almost exclusively favor those boxes being built far outside of a city in a very different wage structure and with a different populace. So there aren't any modular construction companies within city limits, to my knowledge. I may be wrong there, so if I am, please raise your hand. But it is a very strange story that we're tracking, and we're going to see what comes of it, because modular construction is here to stay, and we all need to figure out how to build it, how to make it high quality, and we'll see what happens and if the mayor is able to push that forward and get that moving in the city of Philadelphia. So I'm going to jump into my last slide here, which is our next event. So next week, sometimes we get these late month, early month back-to-backs. So we have our April event. This one will be on Zoom. We're pulling together a group of folks who are all committed to saving the Cecil B. Moore Library. An interesting building historically, an important community landmark facing an uncertain future because the council member hasn't supported what the community wants to do with it. So it's a very interesting, very fraught topic. So I'm excited for the energy and for some potential fireworks and maybe even some inflammatory comments. So grab that QR code. You do need to sign up to get the Zoom information. That isn't public information, so make sure that you do sign up, and you'll get all that information sent to you for next week, April 2nd. So, is there anything else that anyone wants to share? We've got limited time, and we're going to get right into it if not. Okay, well then I'm going to welcome Brianna Bello up here. She is one of our DAG steering committee members, a a planner. She helps run Reading Terminal Market and has been a wonderful addition to our team to introduce Rahim and get us going.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. We're so glad to see so many new and returning faces this week, and we're really excited to welcome Rahim tonight to give some remarks about the work he's been doing over the past few years in the city. I have his bio here. I'll let him introduce himself in further depth, but Rahim Manning serves as a Senior Director of Nighttime Economy for the City of Philadelphia, where he leads the city's efforts to support nightlife, hospitality, and after-dark cultural activity. His work focuses on economic development, public safety and partnerships, and place-based strategies that strengthen Philadelphia's 24-hour ecosystem. Rahim also teaches at Drexel University's LeBeau School of Business and is the founder of the Weekender Experiences, a global travel agency and events company. We're excited to hear about his vision for Philadelphia, the ins and outs of his role, how it's evolved over the past few years. 2026 preparations, we know that is on the mind of almost, well, everyone at this point in the city. And also just a little bit more about the Philadelphia After Dark report, a report that he led and was released this past summer. So without further ado, I'll let Rahim give his remarks.
All right, good evening, everyone. Thanks, Brianna, and thanks, Eli. Thanks, Dag, for having me as your guest speaker this evening. I plan to not lecture to you all, even though you know I can as a professor, but to have an open conversation. First and foremost, I always like to start off with what is a nightmare? What is a senior director of nighttime economy? Everybody always like, oh, there's a nightmare in the city. It sounds great, but what does he actually do? My job is to turn Philadelphia into a true 24-hour city. What is a true 24-hour city, you may ask? It's a city that has a plan for what it looks, feels, and operates like at 2 p.m. and at 2 a.m. And that for those who operate at 2 a.m., who whether they're live, working, or playing at 2 a.m., have the same access to city services as those of us who operate, live, work, and play at 2 p.m. So there's an equity balance there that we often forget to talk about when we talk about nighttime economy, nightlife for 24-hour cities. Why is that? The world is changing. We are no longer an egalitarian society that lives and moves with the seasons and whether or not we can grow crops. But we have a world where people work, live, play, and operate around the clock. And cities of tomorrow, and cities that are going to be the places and destinations that people want to go, understand this, govern this, and plan for this. And that's one thing we have to realize. Nightlife happens no matter where you are, no matter if you try to restrict it, no matter if you try to zone it out or plan it out or legislate it out, it will continue to happen because it is the nature of us to gather in places. And so the job is to be proactive about what our residents and citizens need, but also to make our city, again, competitive. Cities of tomorrow are not competing with the suburbs or the rural areas of their states, but with each other around the world. Philadelphia competes, of course, on the Northeast Corridor with New York and DC and Baltimore. If you continue down 95 with Atlanta and Miami. But we also compete with Copenhagen and Madrid and the UK and London and Liverpool and other cities. And people are choosing where they want to live, where they want to raise a family, where they want to grow, how they're taking their next job, based on factors that you can't just tie to daytime productivity and economy. And so having a plan for how we operate around the clock and how we support those who are operating around the clock is important. Now, unless you to it, a big part of my job is nightlife, right? It's entertainment, it's the fun part, which gets a lot of the kind of shine, but it's not the largest part of my job. When we look at our nighttime economy, our largest sector is essential night shift workforce. It's people who are keeping our city running at night, keeping the lights on, repairing the roads, the hospital, the emergency services, those people who are actually, making their living at night. And so when we talk about nightlife, a lot of times I'm educating people because it goes right to who's drinking, partying, and clubbing, but not who's paying bills, raising family, and trying to survive, right, in the city at night. And we have to shift our environment in the way we think when we look at nightlife. So I like to always think about that. We'll get to the clubbing and bars, and we got some cool stuff coming up, knowing that we're going to have the world here this summer. And I'll share some fresh off the press stuff with you guys today. But we have to reshape that, having a plan on how you govern your nightlife is about making sure you have quality of life for your residents. I often share that it is my job to ensure that people can have a good time at night, party, have fun, go out, but it is also my job to ensure that people can sleep at night, that people feel safe moving around our city at night. So we look at lighting and design, right? How are we looking at our city after dark? And, talking with a lot of planners, architects here, assuming that's the crowd. I always loved speaking to this crowd because we as a city govern and plan for the day, and we hope these things work at night. We build office buildings to have thousands of people during the day, and then it's there at night. But, what you build in the environment has an effect 24 hours, and I'll break this down. So you build a big office building, and it's all shiny at night of the day, and it reflects the sun, and it's a part of the timeline, and at night, it casts nothing but shadows, doubt, and fear when people walk by it because no one's in it. You're not activating it. It's not well lit. So you have inadvertently hurt the environment if you didn't plan for that building's existence at night because you were worried about its use during the day. And so that's the goal, right, of how you reshape how a city plans around the clock in 24 hours. I think one of the most important parts of this work, which I'll give a kind of background on how we got here, is that we liaison between all the departments. My team, and shout out to our director of nighttime economy, Emeka Anasi and Wu behind me that works with us to support our nighttime economy. We're out at night, understanding, talking, dealing with residents, and then we are translating to what that means during the day for our legislators, for our admin, for people running offices, because oftentimes we govern during the day and they go home and then, we're like, hey, I hope it works at night, or we have a couple town halls and like, oh, you told us something, okay, we'll go back during the day and figure it out, but people don't go and see. But the work of nighttime governance started in around about 2014, so it's a new way of governing. It started in Amsterdam. So, most people are familiar with Amsterdam and, the reputation it has for being a global nightlife destination. It was the first city in all of the world to have a night mayor. And Amsterdam brought on the concept of nighttime governance in a formal government position way. There was a lot of work but the formal government position way with Merrick Milan in 2014, because they were having these issues with where you have nightlife and tourism and then safety and issues, all clashing. And they were struggling with trying to deal with those things. The district, or Rembrandt Square, if you're familiar with, the red light district and entertainment district was growing, but it was butting up against the neighborhoods and people weren't feeling safe. And then people were going there for things that they were like, hey, how are we gonna, make all these things happen? And so they came up with the first municipal role to govern and convene all of those who have a say in what our city looks like, what that city looks like. And it changed the reputation of what Rembrandt Square was, where it was able to be a space where everyone could find enjoyment, families during the day and in the early evening, and then it would transition to a little bit more heavy nightlife and clubs and things that are illegal here in the U.S. that happen there, if you know anything about Amsterdam. And it was a total success. And some of the things that Merrick Milan implemented right away was something as simple as a host program that took off in Europe, which is, if you've ever been to a lot of the European cities, sometimes you'll see in these plazas, people that have these shirts. They're usually bright, they're orange or yellow or green, and it says, ask me. And they're there to guide and make people feel comfortable in the area, because a lot of times from the research they found is that, when you're in a place and it's a lot going on and you just don't know where to go, the confusion was often confused with fear. And so helping to kind of guide and put bright faces there to support people that were coming there helped change the reputation of the environment. One of the things a lot of my cohorts or counterparts around the world, which now we're up to about 115 or so of us, with 100 of us being in Europe, and when I say us, nighttime mayors or people dedicated to nighttime economy being in Europe, and it's about 15 counterparts in the US that we have. I serve as the first in Philadelphia, but we had some other cities in the US that were a little proactive in beating us to it, which I was a little upset about. I wanted to be first in the US, but we made it happen. So what we all look at is changing perception. And one of the things that nighttime businesses, nighttime spaces, and nighttime activities deal with is the issue of safety. That's one of the first things everybody asked me about when I got in this role. What about safety? Is it safe? I don't want to go out at night because it isn't safe. And what you have to look at is that, there's two parts when it comes to safety. There's actual fear of bodily, physical, or property harm, right, which we call crime. And making sure that we do have a plan for that is always a part of the goal, to make sure that people, when they go out, they return home whole and with all the things that they left out with is a goal. That's not the biggest thing facing our nighttime economy. The bigger thing facing our nighttime economy is the fear of unsafety, or the feeling of being unsafe. And it's, and a lot of us in the city, if you have family that are outside the city or the suburbs, may have thought I'm going to tell. Are you going to be okay downtown? Are you safe? Or people from the suburbs being afraid to come in because they watch what the news, promotes all the time, and they associate that. And so a lot of times we are looking at how do we make sure we're having a plan that people are safe, but also helping change the perception that these things don't equate to these things. And what we've seen working with UPenn, Mike Fitchman, who's a professor at UPenn, we did like a study just to see where the crime was happening, right? We're a city, we have crime. I'm not gonna act like we don't. But what we saw with a study was that the closer you got to a nightlife venue, the safer you were when it came to where major and crimes were being reported, right? And many of my counterparts across the world had already started seeing that. And that when you have a vibrant, well-lit, active nighttime area, it literally promotes safety. And so I think one of the bigger things that I spent a lot of time in this role is shifting that perception. So what are some of the things I did to do that, right? Again, I've been in this role almost 4 years. Some of the things we did first was a listening tour. When I got into my role, first and foremost, I don't have a government background primarily. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a problem-solving person. So I got into the role and I said, okay, well, what are the problems, right? We know what everybody talks about, but what are the real issues that people are having around nighttime economy? So I had a listening tour. I spent a whole year. I did over 200 stops on this listening tour and engaged with as many groups of people, businesses, and those who are moving at night as I can. And I aggregated that into maybe 10 main areas where people that just kept coming up. And of course, safety was one of them, transportation and lighting and kind of investment in nighttime economy from businesses. And we were able to kind of look at that, right? And then I started to put those things into actions as solutions. So one of the things we did for safety was, okay, we have to address real safety, which we work with the police all the time to do. We work with the Office of Homeless Services. We work with all the things that people kind of called out that made them feel unsafe and put plans in there. But it was like, okay, how do we change the perception? Well, we launched the Liberty Bell Safety Certification Program, which was a program to take businesses. They come to our office and they get trained on 6 major areas that we found that a lot of people associate with going out that was maybe not always the best perception. Those areas were harm reduction. So drug and alcohol use, responsible drug and alcohol use, understanding that drug and alcohol use is going to happen in nightlife areas, but how do we make sure that if it is happening, venues are prepared for all the best thoughts, right? And so we do drug and alcohol training with our health department. We provide Narcan behind every bar for venues that participate in Liberty Bell Safety Certification. We also provide drink spike testing strips, right? So that if you go to a Liberty Bell Safety certified bar and you feel that maybe you took eye off your drink or anything like that, we have single-use drink test strips that you can grab, test your drink really quickly to give you a peace of mind, right? And then most of our bars who participate in Liberty Bell, if you ever had a problem with your drink, they would exchange it. But having the test strips help us kind of either, 1, calm your nerves, but also 2, if there was an issue, catch somebody. Conflict resolution. Understanding that we're in high energy environments, people are drinking, having a good time, conflict can get out of hand if not handled well. So we train these venues on how to make sure that they're using de-escalation tactics, making sure that if you are engaging with someone who's intoxicated and they're excited, how to approach them, to not enrage them, but to calm them down. And we utilize best practices and teaching them on that. Active shooter awareness and prevention. Again, we live in a country where guns are prevalent and we know that we have active shooter situations. So how to best preserve life, how to best make sure that you have a plan, how to best make sure that your employees know, how to make sure that your guests are well taken care of. Diversity, equity, and inclusion, making sure that if you are serving a population that you don't normally serve or someone that you are making sure your staff is trained to be able to engage, which has really been a part going into our World Cup when we're going to have a lot of diverse visitors from around the world coming in. Human trafficking prevention and awareness. making sure that our businesses have a plan to identify and offer help in a way that doesn't put people in harm. That's one thing that I think a lot of people don't realize, that like human trafficking is a thing. We are a major city and it happens. And if we don't, one, bring it to the limelight that it is something that happened and plan, we may not be able to save as many people as we can. So having things like, who's familiar with like an angel shot? If you ever heard of it, right? So having something on a menu that someone who may be human trafficked or may be in distress can order to signal that they need help without letting their victimizers know. And so having plans like that. This program works with PPD. We work with WAR, which is women, the Center Against Sexual Abuse in the city, as well as the health department, to ensure that these businesses are trained in that aspect. And then we promote that, hey, these businesses have gone above and beyond to ensure that if you came and patronized them, that you will feel safer, right? And that's just helping to address a lot of that perception stuff. So that's one program that we particularly ran out. The other part is vibrancy. We talked about Market East, which I do serve on the Market East revitalization task force now, as we look at revitalizing a very storied corridor. One of the things that we did in Nighttime Economy, they're like, okay, so what can we do to help Market East? Well, we need to bring people there. What brings people around? Music. So we launched a program called Tuesday Nights Live, in which we provide live instrumentation in our hotel lobbies around Market East to bring people out, just to, hey, come have a drink, come have a good time, come catch, the tagline is meet me in the lobby if you want to catch up with a friend, and having music and providing, gigs for artists to perform in the city. Really successful pilot that we ran for 16 weeks, and now we're launching what we call Weeknights Live, which is going to be a Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday version of that, with Tuesday staying at our hotels on Market East, but our Monday and Wednesdays providing live music in our neighborhood corridors around the city, and rotating there. And we're investing in paying artists in Philadelphia to perform, and again, bring liveliness to corridors to help with the issue of being unsafe or the perception of that issue, but also, again, making sure we're supporting businesses and artists around the city. Other things that we have going on, and when we address particular issues, we do a lot. And I mean, this takes up more time than I actually would like a part of the job that me and my team does, but we do a lot of mediations between businesses and residents. You guys know Philly's a city of neighborhoods. We were not planned the way we ended up being, so all of our entertainment is butted up against residential, right? Like, we don't have anything that's a formal entertainment district outside of the stadium complex. If you're going to your best club, bar, restaurant, it is next to somebody living. And so with our unit, before we kind of came in, a lot of the burden for mediation was on the businesses, right? If a neighbor did not like what was going on at a business around them, whether it be sound or egress or traffic or parking, they would complain to the city would come out, we would probably cite the business if something was wrong, and it was just a cyclical kind of situation there. Well, now we mediate those situations. We say, hey, neighbors, let's sit down. What are the concerns? Oh, well, the concerns is when I come home at night from work, I can't park because this bar has a lot of people. Okay, let's see how we can mitigate and help that situation, right? What are the concerns? The concerns is, I can't hear because the bar is loud or the club's loud. Okay, let's look at it and measure how can we help this bar soundproof itself so that it doesn't become an issue. We also then sometimes, and again, this isn't the most popular thing, but we also sometimes push back against neighbors. Neighbors aren't always right. You won't hear many people from the city say that, especially if they're elected, which unfortunately I'm not, but sometimes neighbors aren't always right? And our businesses and nightlife have the right to exist. People are patronizing this business and coming, and I get you think you own that parking spot on the street, but you don't. So how can we, protect businesses so that they aren't unfairly targeted? There's no secrecy about it. Our nighttime businesses are the most regulated businesses in the city, which is in most cities, right? They have to have so many trainings, regulations, and licenses because they sell alcohol, and so they get a right to exist as well. So how does our unit make sure that those two things happen? First is bringing them together, having those conversations, but also making sure we use city resources to help businesses and also make residents feel comfortable in their neighborhoods. And we found a lot of success with that, but again, that's a part of the job that sometimes gets very contentious. That, again, it's not my favorite part of the job, and I have a lot of favorite parts of this job. So that kind of just shapes a lot of the stuff that we do there. We also change policy, right? That's the other part. If you really want to become a true 24-hour city, your laws and your policies need to match that. We can go out and spot pick all the things that we can fix here, and we can throw programs that are fun and cool, but if we're not changing the laws to invite investment and growth in our nighttime economy, then we're doing something wrong. So we work with our legislators to update. Definitions of the nightclub is one thing we did, which was, oh my God, it was so outdated and it wasn't the same in most of the code. So we updated our definition of the nightclub to allow live music in our restaurants by right. Before, the moment a venue had live music, they needed a new license or zoning. And sometimes that zoning wasn't allowed in a place that you were. So if you were a restaurant in Rittenhouse Square, and we don't allow nightclubs in Rittenhouse Square, but you're like, hey, I want to do brunch. I want to have a pianist. I want to have a saxophonist there. And the moment you do that, we could shut you down as the city, which just made no sense because that's not the model of restaurants anymore. People don't just go to eat, they go for entertainment and the experience. So we updated that, working with city council and looking at other things on how to, again, increase investment in our nighttime economy. What you see behind me was a big thing that we did. We did the first comprehensive economic impact report of the nighttime economy in the city of Philadelphia, because we were doing this work for a while. I think I was in the role for about 2 years. We knew the anecdotal impact of what we were doing. We were getting the success stories from businesses and people, but like, what are the dollars and cents and what was it bringing in? Well, we did our report, took about a year, it was a lot of work, and we realized that the nighttime economy in Philly brings in $26.2 billion a year in economic activity, employs over 130,000 people in our city, and is 13% of all jobs in the city. And that was important, and we also, from those 13% of all jobs, brings in about $500 million in wage taxes. So the money that's going to go pay for our schools and our roads and our infrastructure and our city services, a large part of that is coming from our nighttime economy, but we are not investing that back into to grow it. So we also advocate for investing into our nighttime economy via many different avenues, supporting businesses via programs we have at the Department of Commerce where I'm based, through our Catalyst program, our storefront improvement program, and making sure that, again, we are looking at our nighttime economy not just as something that's nice to have, but as something to invest in, to grow, and to use as a competitive tool. We're in the Department of Commerce. We also do attraction and retention of businesses in the city of Philadelphia. So any big business you see come to the city, cities get together and put together, plans, whether it's tax incentives, program incentives, to invite those businesses in because they bring jobs, and then that jobs brings, employment, and we get wage taxes, and it's how we kind of keep the city growing. Well, because we shaped how we looked at our nighttime economy, it's not just, culture, and it's not just art, and it's not just that nice to have stuff. We looked at it as an economic development. We are now one of the pillar industries that the city invests in, along with life sciences, along with technology, along with advanced manufacturing and international development. Nighttime economy falls under that investment as well. So we do attract businesses to come and invest in Philly and then help retain businesses. That is a gist of what I do, and I think hopefully I opened a lot of eyes, because again, I meet a lot of people and always like, oh, we have a nightmare and it's great, we're gonna stay open later, there's gonna be all these great things, and I'm like, if that was all my job, it'd be really easy. So hopefully that gives us a little bit about, or a nicer bit about what it is that we're working on in making Philly a true 24-hour city and being globally competitive. I would love to take some questions there, but I know a lot of people are thinking about 2026. So what are we doing to prepare for 2026, right, from the nighttime economy point of view and our city point of view? Well, you guys know that we are hosting a myriad of events that are a once-in-a-lifetime confusions that we'll probably never see again unless most of us in here make it another 50 years and we get the Olympics, the tricentennial, and then maybe some other major sporting event. We're hosting the World Cup. We have approved for 6 matches. Just to put the size of that around, each World Cup match has the economic impact of a Super Bowl, and we're hosting 6 of those in a 30-day period, right? Additionally to that, at the same time, we're celebrating our semi-quincentennial, which is the 250th birthday of America. At the same time, also we'll have the MLB All-Star Game during these whole times. And even to the point where our biggest match for the World Cup is a round of 16 match that takes place on July 4th at the same time that we are celebrating the 250th. And so we are expecting over 500,000 visitors per week for the World Cup alone, an additional 1 million visitors to come in for the semi-quincentennial, and then an additional 250,000+ that come in for the MLB All-Star. weekend. And so this is going to be one of those places and one of those opportunities that we could change how the world sees and experiences Philadelphia. One example that I heard from Angela Bao, for those who know from Visit Philly, when we were talking about what this opportunity means for the city. If you guys are familiar with Atlanta, which most of us are, right, as the busiest airport in the world, it is, the Hollywood outside of Hollywood. It is the cultural center. I actually had the amazing opportunity to go to undergrad in Atlanta. And the thing is this, before 1994, Atlanta was a small city in the South. It was only big to people in Georgia. Most people didn't transient to it. If you didn't have family connected to it, you didn't know much of what was going on there. It was connected to civil rights, so you did know some of those things. But as far as business, Fortune 500, I think it might have had Coca-Cola as the anchor business there. Well, then they got a bid to host the Olympics, and they invested in their city, and they grew their airport, and they built their highway system, and they built their belt line. And now Atlanta has the busiest airport. They went from a metro of less than 1 million people to a metro of 6 million people now. And about 50 Fortune 500 companies are now based in Atlanta or around. And that's all because they had the global stage in 1996 for the Olympics. So these events do have lasting effects if you can do them right. And so as we welcome the world to the city of Philadelphia, we're preparing to make sure that we do this right so that Philadelphia is on everybody's mind for 2026 and beyond. Some of those things we're doing, in which I told you I'll share something hot off the press, just passed yesterday in our state legislature, is a bill to extend our hours for nightlife, 2 additional hours to 4 a.m. And that is something that my team in the mayor's office, we've been working on for a long time with the state. And most people are like, well, why? Why are we going later? Well, because we have the world here. And if you have ever traveled anywhere, everybody's not on our time zone, right? And so as much as it's about I want people to go out and have a great time, but it's also about that we're going to have people from our matches that are on 6, 7, 8, and 9-hour time differences. They're not going to be hungry for dinner at your 8 o'clock hour. They're not going to be asleep at your 1 o'clock hour. They're going to be up. They're going to be exploring, and they're going to be looking for things to do. Additionally, the FIFA matches are happening over 4 different time zones. There are matches that start at midnight our time that may not end till after 2 a.m. And if you know anybody that knows their soccer and loves their football, as they will say, try to kick somebody out that's watching their team in penalty kicks at 2:10. You think Philly fans are rowdy. These European soccer fans can get crazy. And so these are the things that we are doing from our perspective to make sure that we are globally competitive, and when people come to Philadelphia, they have a great time. We're doing a myriad of other things. We're also making sure that our neighborhoods are involved in the celebration, and so that we're not just keeping all the economic impact downtown, but we're encouraging people to go out into the neighborhoods. We're doing neighborhood festivals and extravaganzas throughout the whole year to celebrate during that time. Our FIFA Fan Fest is free. It is the only one that is free in the country, and we announced that it was free from the onstart. And so we are making sure that when people come to our city for 2026 in these next couple months, that they are having a great time and that we are investing in our future. These are the people that should be bringing companies to our city soon, that should be coming here to live, work, play, and going back to their home countries to talk about how amazing Philadelphia is. So I will stop there because I want to make this a little bit more of a conversation, and I would love to answer questions that you guys have, and it could range anything that I talked about or didn't. So I saw the first hand in the back. Oh, yeah, thank you. Okay. Perfect.
Okay, Raheem, are you aware that next week there's no school?
Spring break.
No, I'm talking for public school.
You said there's no school?
No school at all.
Okay.
So what are your plans with the crime prevention, de-escalate crew that you work with? Because you're looking at 40th Street.
Mm-hmm.
You're looking at the fashion district.
Yep.
You're looking at the parks. Mm-hmm. Even some of the clubs that you say that fall to the after dark entity. Mm-hmm. What is it that y'all are implementing now while you're still doing what you're doing? Because they're going to come. No matter where the money is, they're going to show up.
Mm-hmm. And so if I'm hearing you correctly, you're saying so there's no week, there's no school. What are we doing to be proactive about the teenagers and stuff going out and being around. Love that. I actually will take that question from a bigger and broader standpoint. That is one thing that, how do I put this, where I feel like our city struggles with when it comes to our teenagers. And I've had this conversation with many of my city colleagues and our state and local representatives. I think unfortunately we've gotten to a place because of what we saw during the pandemic when, people didn't really have organized places to go. We saw a lot of those things that people are afraid when you see a bunch of teenagers come together. But we've gotten scared of our teenagers. We're really scared, man. Most of our businesses will not let them in if they're not 17. They can't even go to Chick-fil-A or Wawa if they're not 17. And then we act shocked when you have 100 teenagers on a street, nothing organized to do, and it's pandemonium, right? I mean, I'm young enough to remember when I was a teenager. We're all trying to figure out what it is and the pecking order in life. And so I think the approach to that, and one of the things we're working on, particularly with the program that we're looking to launch in the next couple of months, is providing spaces and things for teenagers to have constructive fun, right? When I was a little younger, I went to all the teen clubs in Philly. Now, if you're born and raised in Philadelphia, we had a lot of teen clubs, and they were like, 14 to get in, 13 to get in, and you could party till you was about 19. And then even if you're a really OG Philly, you remember the clubs in Philly used to be 17 to enter and 21 to drink. Don't know why we were allowing 17 and 21-year-olds in together. But listen, I was in there. And so I was there. But that ability to have a lot of things to do taught me a couple of things, right? It taught me how to be a responsible patron of nightlife, right? You can't not teach teenagers or give them opportunities to have constructive outlets and then all of a sudden think they're going to go out and know how to behave. So to answer your question, programmatic things. We are working with, just all of our partners around the city, and even in nighttime economy, we look at teenagers as a part of our, our requirements of creating safe, structured opportunities for them to have fun and do things so that we aren't just closing them out of places, like opening doors and welcoming them in. And one of the programs that we're looking to launch, and we're still working on, is called Teens Night Out, where we do a dedicated night each month where we incentivize our businesses to invite teenagers in, whether it's through discounted food or providing DJs or open mics, and we'll cover the cost with what we call a program grant. And that way we're teaching our teenagers how to appreciate the city and enjoy the spaces that are around, because what we do is that we have these teenagers go through Rittenhouse and they go downtown, they go to the gallery, they go to the place, they see all these things around them and don't know what's in it. They don't know what's in the buildings that they're in. They don't know the restaurant scenes here. And so how are we going to teach them that? And so that answers your questions a little bit. Now, it's not launching next week, just to be honest, but those are the things that we're thinking about from a nighttime economy point of view on how we make sure that our teenagers can also add to what the vibrancy of the city looks like.
You also watch the social media stuff too, right?
Oh, listen, I try to stay out the comments.
A lot of stuff come from there.
Yeah. I mean, that's a rabbit hole we're not gonna go down, but I know exactly what you mean.
There we go. Thank you again for speaking. It was very insightful. So I know that with a lot of the nightlife, there's regulation, and one of those regulations entails with alcohol, with the strict cutoff, especially in Pennsylvania, on what time can stop selling alcohol at. And if there's anything with nightlife, alcohol is, for better or for worse, a huge component of it. What is the city's approach to alcohol sales like, or what you plan on doing with alcohol sales, whether you allow businesses to sell alcohol much later? As I addressed, one, of course, in Pennsylvania, all of our alcohol regulations, hours, sale are all state controlled. So the city does not make or enforce any alcohol policy. However, it is our job to advocate for what we need for a city. And one of the things we advocated for and the state did approve is that we are extending hours this summer, where businesses are allowed to go 2 hours later to meet the needs of the world being here this summer and making sure that we're creating a festive environment. So making cases like that. The other thing is, one thing you address that, I'll put out there is that we often talk with our counterparts around the world. And if you've ever been in Europe, they have less of the strict closing hours thing. And,
any of my counterparts will tell you, and we will, have the research to back this, that strict closing hours creates more problems than less strict closing hours. Let me paint the picture for those who are like, wait, people drinking longer doesn't create more problems? No. When you have strict closing hours, let's say, boom, shut the doors, this is now the club. We're all in here having a good time, we're drinking, we're having fun. We're having so much fun, someone screams, hey, there's 20 minutes last call. Most of us are going to run to the bar, right? And then if you're with a bunch of friends, like my friends are, it's like, wait, it's 3 of us, cool, can I get 3? And then you're like, wait, you're not gonna outbuy me 3, I'll get you 3. And then, you're there, you're chugging alcohol, and then you're being put out into Rittenhouse Square. You don't know how much that alcohol is affecting you yet. It takes, several minutes for you to understand, but you step outside after taking that last beer you had to chug or that drink you had to chug, and you're like, huh, I'm good, give me the keys, I feel great. And you get drunk while you're driving and you end up injuring or harming someone. Well, studies around the world have shown that when you give people more time, less regulated, less strict closing, you self-regulate your alcohol better. So if, let's say we're in a club now and the club doesn't have a closing time, you don't like, yo, listen, it's 1 o'clock. I'm out, right? I'm going. You have a great time. Cool, I'm gonna stay. You may be like, it's 2 o'clock. It's my time. I may be like, I'm gonna see the sunrise. And so therefore it also takes away the strain on city resources. Right now at 2 o'clock, we put thousands of people out on your streets. Thousands of people out in Rittenhouse Square, on South Street, in Fishtown, and then we wonder why neighbors are like, shut these people up, because they're all out at the same time. But when you expend hours, which again, we're working on getting that here and that concept in the U.S., but our European, South American, some of our Canadian counterparts have understood that it actually lessens the strain on city services. You don't need so many police all at once. You don't need so many emergency services all at once. And then neighbors are able to have the egress spread out over time. So now it's not a bunch of, intoxicated people on the street talking loud, but it's 1 and it's 2 and it's less of a burden. So again, we are extending hours this summer. That is fresh off the press. We actually have a press release tomorrow, and so I gave you guys that before we were supposed to press release speak about that. But that is something we're doing. We're always advocating on things that support our business, that also support safety and vibrancy of our city and the ability to compete, honestly.
Thank you so much.
No problem. Okay.
I may have missed this if you discussed it earlier, but I was wondering if you all are considering hosting the different events across the city of Philadelphia, or is it primarily like in the Center City area, like Upper North Broad, or other areas?
Absolutely not. We are celebrating all across the city. We have identified 20 commercial corridors in every district in which we're having festival atmosphere. Neighborhood extravaganzas is what we're calling them. Our fan festival is not downtown, it's in Lemon Hill. And we are also partnering with organizations that already do great events every year to ensure that those events are part of the 2026 and 250th celebration. So no, it will not just be downtown. We're going all through the city. Even with nighttime economy, we represent and over the whole city, right? So from the upper northeast all the way to southwest. And even with our programs like Tuesday Nights Live, when we expanded that program and added the Wednesday and Monday components, those rotate neighborhoods every 3 months. So we'll be launching on Monday. So I hope everybody can make it out to a Weeknights Live. We're launching Monday with Monday Nights Live, Tuesday Nights Live, and Wednesday Nights Live. Mondays are East Passyunk, where we're going to be providing live music in East Passyunk. Tuesdays are going to stay downtown at our hotels because that is the nature of that program. And then Wednesdays, we're going to Baltimore Ave, where you're going to be able to do dinner and a show. We're going to have live instrumentation as you do dinner at several restaurants along Baltimore Ave. And the Wednesday and Monday part will rotate each 3 months to different neighborhoods. So it may be in your neighborhood soon, but yes, all around the city.
Hi. I just moved back here from London, where I was doing stuff in the nightlife economy. I was a DJ there a while.
Awesome.
I knew your counterpart.
Yeah.
And
Amy's awesome.
I just want to say to the people in this room that Philadelphia's issues around this are the same in London as well. And London has an experience with the same issues in terms of, nuisance businesses, accommodating residences, closing of clubs, regulatory issues. But I wanted to tell you that from a perspective of just someone who's come back from London, Philadelphia has an image and a good one. And people know Philadelphia music.
Yeah.
And I hope that whatever you're promoting throughout this festive summer that you definitely promote the sound of Philadelphia, because everyone knows it. And when they think of Philadelphia, they think of the Philly sound.
Listen, that's a great one. We definitely gonna clap it up for that.
And Tuesdays.
Hey.
And Tuesdays. My question is, I did work on the London Olympics while I was in London, and one of the things London has done recently, which you may well know, is they've extended the underground, the tubes, on the weekends to be
24 hours, yeah.
At night, selected lines. The one of the question that I have for you would be, with all the, one of the problems we have with the nighttime economy is access to public transport.
Correct.
In the evening, there's not much going on. And it discourages people from staying around late at night because the subways aren't running, the buses are half an hour intervals, Uber, Lyft, that can be difficult, taxis as well. So I wanted to find out, are you working with SEPTA and other public transit providers, and even the cab companies as well, to see if you can provide some weekend late night services to encourage people to stay, who are going to stay out, they don't want to drive, but also have a reason to stay out, knowing that they can stay out late and have a way to get home.
Absolutely. We're always working with our partners, especially SEPTA, as, again, it's essential to keeping the city going. And no nightlife is robust without transportation services supporting and backing it. And so that's something that we're always doing. Our mayor is advocate of SEPTA and propping SEPTA up and making sure that we realize it is a lifeline in our city. And so when we talk about extending hours or extending nightlife and making it more safe and vibrant and accessible, SEPTA is always at the conversation. I know I'm seeing a lot up here, Brianna, so I'm gonna start pointing in a second.
Hi. So earlier today, I read this report from the National Independent Venue Association, which is a trade group for venues without ties to publicly traded companies or multinational corporations. It found that just 28% of independent stages in Pennsylvania were profitable in 2024, which is, I think, the most recent data. What do you make of that? Like, what sort of struggles do independent venues and really face that corporate ones don't? And is there anything the city is doing to support those businesses specifically?
Yeah, absolutely. We partner with NEVA, our local NEVA chapter, whose president is Kerry Park, serves on our Nighttime Economy Advisory Council. We have an advisory council made up of 25 stakeholders of the nighttime economy, from the president of NEVA to DJs to the police commissioners that are on there, so that we all take a holistic approach. But that report is one that we also attend NEVA's convention every year, and I usually speak or represent, and Mecca attends as well. Is that what that says is that in the market for live music now and the way music is consumed, it is more and more important to preserve and support independent venue spaces, because they become the cultural hubs that keep that sound of Philadelphia going, right? People who are, first coming out, first performing, the stages that they perform are these independent venues, right? And most of the owners of independent venues are not in it for the money, as you can see. Only 28% of them in the state were profitable. They're in it for the love of the game, for the culture, and for being one of the artists themselves, many of them. And so we actively work with NEVA in our city and nationally to support policies that keep them open, that recognize them as cultural assets and not just as businesses that are allowed to come and go, but to be preserved. And then we also, again, are always supporting our artists. One of the things we just did is the Illuminate the Arts grants is one of the things that I oversee and give out. And this is, I think, our 5th year. We've given out over $6 million every year to artists just for being an artist, and to organizations that support artists and venues as well from the city. And we've advocated that for I guess 6 years now, and we've given out this year alone 1,300 different artists and organizations we were able to give some financial support to. And we make it very easy because we understand that there's a lot of barriers for being an artist, and then also having places where you can perform. So we're actively always supporting NEVA, always working with them to see how we can make policies that help them, how that we can make sure that they are seen as cultural assets to be preserved, protected, and invested in, and not allowed to be just by the wayside. Now, on the other side of that, we also partner with our bigger venues as well, and Live Nation and other big companies, but we understand the importance of our independent venues.
Hi, Raheem. My name is Simon.
Hey, Simon.
What stood out for me was all the different areas that you have to balance in trying to unlock the next time economy? Design, lighting, safety, city workers, artists, businesses. Where do you think the biggest opportunities are and the biggest frictions are between those areas?
Yeah, I think the biggest opportunity when it comes to supporting our nighttime economy is that, is governance. We have to update our laws and our rules. And we're a 320-something-year-old city, and our government structure is exactly that. And so it's hard to turn this ship sometimes, but we have to if we want to continue to invest. And I think that's the opportunity because that's within our legislators, right? We just have to convince them that these are the things that make our city important. I think some of the biggest friction is, I'll share one of the things that me and my colleagues could talk about all night over our drinks and stuff, right? Is the fact that a growing and developing city and cranes in the sky looks great until those cranes in the skies are removing our cultural assets, right? And I'll give an example in Philly of where we do a lot. I told you guys one of the least favorite, I love everything I do about my job, least favorite is the mediation between neighbors and residents. Well, that happens more and more when your city is growing and changing and neighborhoods are changing because cultural assets and cultural venues and cultural spaces save neighborhoods. If you look at Fishtown and adjacency, 20, 30 years ago, it was a post-industrial neighborhood, a primarily blue-collar neighborhood, and no one was investing in it. But there were cultural anchors there, like your Johnny Brendas or your Kung Fu Neckties and your venues there, that kept that neighborhood alive, and they started popping up more and more because cultural spaces are used to non-traditional stuff. So they can go into an old warehouse, or they can go into a building that wasn't that desirable. And those venues and restaurants started popping up in Fishtown, and now Fishtown is one of the fastest growing, most popular neighborhoods in all of America, not even in Philly. It has more restaurants popping up, more venues popping up left and right, and guess what came after that? Development, and which is great, right? So now you have cultural asset that's been here 20 years, help revive the neighborhood, help people come to that place, and now development, 1,000-bed apartment next to it, and then the people in the 1,000-bed apartment are unhappy with the natural behavior of a venue, meaning it's loud, meaning people will be there, and then they complain, and that venue now is shut down. And so that neighborhood that was revived by cultural spaces now is losing cultural spaces fast. And so I think the friction part of that is making sure we create an environment where both those things can happen. Our neighborhoods can be invested in and updated, but our cultural aspects are saved. And the way this has been talked about in Europe and is spreading as a kind of a thought process is what we call agent of change. Is anyone here in the development or space is familiar with agent of change law? So agent of change, for those who are unfamiliar, is a zoning kind of law where cities enact agent of change to protect what already existed, and it goes both ways. So that amazing venue that helped, weather the storm when the neighborhood was going down and things were changing, and now it's an apartment being built next door. Well, we don't put the onus on the venue to change what it's been doing. We put it on the new person on the block. You're the developer. You're coming in next to a venue that has live music. You need to soundproof your windows. If your windows are facing this venue, you can't put the thinnest, cheapest windows in. You need to invest to soundproof. Or if it's cheaper for you, you could soundproof the venue if they're okay with that. And so that's agent of change. The reverse, residential neighborhood that now is giving a cultural, infusion, and venues are starting to open up in a residential neighborhood. Same thing. The venue, the onus is on the new person on the block. And those are ways European cities, and again, it's spreading throughout Europe a lot. Some of our US cities are starting to adopt similar policies to protect both, to walk and chew gum, to have revitalized neighborhoods and the culture that helped anchor them in that time. And so I think that's the friction, because when you start looking at development laws and telling people what they can and cannot build and how they can and cannot build, that's a longer battle. But I hope that answers your questions on some of the opportunities and then some of the bigger frictions we face. And again, it's not unique to Philadelphia. It's something global that we talk about in this role. I read a couple people over here that's had their hand up for a while. Right? Yeah.
Thanks, my friend behind you. Hi, my name is Anastasia Crisostomo-Dewan. I am first vice president for the Philadelphia Metropolitan Board of Realtors. You just answered some of my questions, or some of what you just said plays into my question. But before I get into that, I want to put my presidential hat on. I really wish I would have known, and I see some of my real estate professionals, I see Ms. Beal, St. Beal in the audience. I really wish I had known about the residential and business mediation program, because I live in a very gentrified neighborhood, Point Breeze, and directly across the street from me, it was a cultural center, a music space. I won't say their name, one or two. And I know for a fact that one of our neighbors got them kicked off the block. These people came onto our street. One of the leaseholders came here to go to school, went to Temple, decided to set up shop, created a music venue that was well received by the neighborhood and brought in a lot of people from outside of the neighborhood, which also supported some of the local businesses, bars, and things that we have in the neighborhood. And now they're gone. If we had known about this, if I had known about this mediation program, I would have definitely.
Well, we appreciate everywhere to spread the word. Yes, yes.
Yeah. And then back, so I put my realtor hat, my realtor's hat back on. How can real estate professionals, more so on the commercial side, but residential as well, how can we be proactive in development, taking the different things I heard you say about the windows and things, but how can we as real estate professionals be proactive when it comes to development or even working with our local RCOs and CDCs?
One, you spoke on a lot of things, right? Again, I've been in this role almost 4 years, and I am still new in any definition of city government and how we're operating, right? My team is growing. I brought on a Mecca maybe after being in about a year and a half. I think you're coming on 2 years or 3 years? 3? Yeah, and so we're growing, but again, it's city government. So everyone doesn't know that we exist. And, that is something that, I wish we could get out and talk. I went on a listening tour 200 stops to try to make sure as many people as I could knew that we were here. But the best way to help any venue or anybody in that aspect is that you guys spread the word that there are resources to help, right? And a lot of people don't always see the city as a partner, especially when it comes to like nightlife businesses, because we're usually coming in with like fines and regulations, that there is the Department of Commerce and we're here to help. So I appreciate you bringing that up, and I hope that's something that resonates with anybody as you go through your professional career. If you have a venue or something like that, please reach out. The other part is how could realtors help on a commercial end and on a kind of residential way? I think that's a good question. I think often when we're looking at real estate, we sell the best of everything, like, and we also show it during the day, right? We come, hey, meet me at 3 o'clock. Let me show you this beautiful neighborhood, and look at these people, and no one's here.
Because on the commercial side, we have all this adaptive reuse that is coming.
Yeah.
So now we're turning, the daycare and the church and the school into something else that's being, maybe it's partly residential and the bottom is commercial. There's so much changing.
Yeah, I think that the best you can do is set real expectations. I mean, just being honest, sometimes I want to say to neighbors, it's like, you moved into a city. Not only did you move into a city, you moved into a dense neighborhood of the city. Like, you're downtown. Like, if you want quiet, we got Chestnut Hill. We got some really nice, quiet neighborhoods. And listen, don't get me in trouble for that one, Jesus. But I want to say that sometimes, and I think that's the expectation. It's like, okay, what are you looking for in what you're buying? Because yes, I own a property too, and I want a piece of life and quality of life in a property I own as well. But also, you have to respect and understand where you're moving and living. And I think as realtors, you guys set the expectations for that. Not to put your job out there, you sell that property by any way, in any means. But there's also like an expectation, like, hey, this is a vibrant neighborhood. Vibrant doesn't just mean the grass is cut. No, vibrant means people are moving, things are living, it breathes, it operates around the clock. And I think that would help a lot, because I think, even with the pandemic, I know a lot of people that moved during the pandemic, rates were slow, people was moving to neighborhoods. Man, when the lights turned back on, oh my God, they did not know where they moved. And I could name some streets specifically that some of us would be like, why would they move there? Well, they didn't know, South Street. So they were moving to a quiet little residential street that had walking distance and restaurants around. And then they realized, like, oh my God, this is one of the most major arteries in the city. And so those are the things that we can say. And again, it's not to put anything on any realtor as a responsibility, but those are some of the things I think about as I navigate mediating those things. All right, Jasmine, I see you in the back. I know I'm not like.
different artists, specifically the ones that will contribute to the nightlife economy, to be able to either take over those spaces for a certain amount of time, but addressing that there is a financial barrier that they won't necessarily be able to buy it. Because there's this, or you'll hear stories about, oh, this block was such and such back in the day, and it was such a thriving strip, but now it's dilapidated. Is there any initiative being made in that regard?
Yeah, just to address, I know Eli, you brought it up and mentioned Brian Phillips with ISA. In Meantime is a program we partner with. One of my coworkers, Sophie Hang, she oversees the creative economy, and me and her are like this because creative and nighttime overlap a lot. And one of the programs she works on actively is activating vacant storefronts, right? And with pop-up spaces for makers. That may not be at the spot for a own lease or ownership, but have options there. I'm glad you mentioned what we're doing on Market Street, because we will be doing exactly that with a lot of the vacancy on Market Street, is activating pop-up storefronts, and that is a program we continue to support in the Department of Commerce to drop those barriers of entries for that. I think the other things too is just, and I'm gonna put on my super commerce hat now. There's a lot of programs to help entrepreneurs in the city, specifically ones that have been in buildings for a while and have been there but don't own the building, right? We have programs that help businesses purchase the building they're in, right? Now, the landlord has to be willing to sell, and there's some other things that we can't control, but we have those resources. The other thing we see happening is the city's changing fast, and a lot of our cultural businesses, and I mean like whether it's the storefront that's mom and pop owned, that's been there for a while, or whether it's a bar or whatever, sometimes get outpaced of the changing, right? And they've been there and they're not doing it to get rich, or they would have probably been left, but they're there and they're keeping up and things around them are changing. So then they look bad to the neighborhood, but they're still providing a service. Well, we have programs like the Storefront Improvement Program. So, we cover 75% of the costs that helps you update your storefront to stay relevant and look like you support the neighborhood in a way it's changing. And that's a program we have at the Department of Commerce that we have. We have an in-store program for businesses that are on corridors, and these are not for our downtown mega business. These are for corridor-based legacy businesses that if you want to update the inside of your store, because time is gone and you might have had it since the 80s or the 90s, and 90s is a while now, but we will help. So I think the bigger part in that is making sure that like businesses or people you're talking to are reaching out to the Department of Commerce, because again, we have these programs, everybody doesn't know about them, and a lot of times when you hear about something like that, it's a little too late. So we do think about that. We do actively work with our partners, our bids, our CDCs around to making sure that we are investing in those corridors to keep vacancies down. Just being honest, because we're talking to a bunch of developers, architects and all. Some of the issues we run into with that though are, there's a lot of people that own property in the city that don't live in the city, and you can't find them. And so we have, storefronts like, and people ready to go and stuff. And this is what our bids and CDCs work with a lot. And it's like, who owns the building? Like, where are they? They're in New York somewhere. Just being honest. So.
Can I build on that real quick? For the person who just spoke, and I don't know, and it ties into what the lady over here said a little bit earlier. I don't know if it's too late for this or not, but back in the day, I won't tell you how long. Back in the day, I won't tell you how long ago. I attended Meredith School, and our school had, I don't know if they thought of it themselves or if it was a part of the city program. At that time, South Street was a major blighted commercial corridor. And what they allowed us to do as students was go up and down South Street from like Broad to the water line and paint murals up and down all the vacant spots. And so I thought about that when the young lady back here was speaking. And then I also thought about what the lady here said, because schools are out. It might be too late for spring break this year, but maybe another break or something like that where we can create programming or have pre-programmed activities where the youth can get involved in helping us out with some of these efforts.
Yeah, so Anastasia, what you're talking about is one of Philly's just a gem. Jane Golden, for those who know Jane Golden, the Mirror Arts program. That was Jane Golden's work. And let me tell you something, Jane Golden is still at work because the program you talked about on Market East, where we're going to do murals all the way down to the river, is another Jane Golden thing there. And so that's always really, really great and something that we do try to utilize, and we're still using that tool. So awesome. All right, there's quite a few more.
Time for two more. There were two folks that was wondering, you mentioned sort of towards the beginning some of the issues with, designing for daytime rather than for nighttime being somewhat architectural at times, lack of lighting, thinking about how buildings can look during the day but not be effects at night. And I know you've been mentioning, a lot of these programs for, events and all of those things. I was wondering, do you have any sort of active involvement in infrastructure improvement, in, that sort of design side, or is that mostly a different department?
No, yeah, so we actively, again, so when it comes to the governing a nighttime economy, we liaise with all the departments, because most of them have something that's going to affect how our nighttime runs. And we continue to advocate for design things that help, right? Department of Commerce, we do a lot of our commercial corridors. And so when we're designing that aspect, looking at lighting, we help sometimes fund lighting on streetways and streetscapes. But when it comes to like private investment, it's a matter of making awareness of it. And, we have our planning department and, they often look at it. But those are things that we raise awareness for, right? Because we're not building most of these buildings ourselves, but we're also having a conversation while, people are at zoning and all like, hey, are you thinking about how this building is affected at night? And then sometimes it's in, after the fact, like this building is built and this corner has gotten real dark and unsafe now. What can we do to incentivize making it more safe, light lit, and thought about for its nighttime purpose? And so again, not things that we're actively doing because we don't build any buildings, but making sure that we're having those conversations and liaising so that people understand that, when you are planning this building or this development law, that you should be thinking about how it affects the night. Problem?
So we're going to do our final question. No pressure, thank you. Hello, my name is Joanna Briscoe. I'm an event producer and experiential strategist. And first and foremost, thank you so much for giving this comprehensive understanding of the work you've been doing.
Thank you.
But my question really is, what does the city need now from independent producers and cultural strategists when we're already creating nighttime experiences, and what supports exist?
I think one of the unique things about Philly, and I think I usually lead with this, and I didn't because I kind of jumped right in. So a little bit about me. I'm born and raised in West Philadelphia. I went to Overbrook High School, the best high school in all of Philadelphia. I'll put my alumni up against any of your alums. I don't care where you went. I still live in West Philly too, and I love it. I went away for school in undergrad to Atlanta, and then I got the opportunity to live abroad. I lived in China for a little while, and then since living in China and founding my company, I've been to over 200 cities worldwide. I think I'm approaching about 50 countries. So I have, in the work I do, it's not just informed by the knowledge base that I've acquired, but also from just lived experience. Like I go to these cities, even as our role for Nighttime Economy. We were just in London, what was that, last month? Was that February? February, because we go see what other cities are doing to make sure we're bringing back best practices. Now, one thing that's very unique about Philadelphia, especially as we compare it to a lot of other American cities, Imani, is that our cultural promoters are our nightlife, right? Where we have cities where the venues kind of hold the weight. I went to school in Atlanta, and I can go back to Atlanta now, and that was a while ago, and still go to the same venue that I first had that underage drink in and snuck in with that fake ID. It's still there. I could go there, right? Whereas in Philly, it's all about following your cultural promoters because we're such a diverse city, right? We have cultural promoters that really find the niche for where everybody has, and I think it is very important to continue to support those. So some of the support we give out is like the Illuminate the Arts grants. With the Illuminate the Arts grants, it was the first time ever in the city's history that we did two things. Give out grants to individual artists from the city mechanism. Usually we sometimes support through other organizations, but the city directly gives out this grant. And giving grants to for-profit creative enterprises. And we continue to do that. And every year for that grant, since we advocated for that money, we have funded 100% of individual artists who have applied and been eligible, and 100% of creative for-profit enterprises like promoters and things of that sort who have applied. And so those are the resources that we're continuing trying to support and drum up. I think the other big thing that we are working on and need to do as a city is help with equity. And we have a lot of our diverse group of cultural promoters, but they don't have the capital for ownership. And ownership still looks very the same as it did 50 years ago in the city. Most of the people who own stuff look the same. And, just being honest, they're usually middle to upper age white men, right, that own our institutions. And some of them are really great at allowing people to come in and diversify and bring other in. Some of them are not, right? And we see that through the city, and not to be offensive to anybody, we just have to know our city and who owns our stuff. And so having programs that help our cultural and younger generation own some of the spaces, I think would be a real big part of kind of supporting the promoters and people who are coming there, because I often see, and we work with promoters a lot. Anytime we can help, whatever they're doing, whether you're doing a festival or whether you're doing a party, whatever we can do, we try to help. But what we often see is that it goes well, they get a following, it's going, and then something that is a barrier is primarily space. You've outgrown it, or, the place that you were going to allowed you to throw that party there when it was slow and nobody was coming. And then you brought a bunch of people to this space and now they're coming regularly, and it's like, no, we don't need you. And that happens a lot with our cultural promoters and stuff. So again, helping with equity is a big part of one of the things that, I would love to see from the city. And I think in return, our promoters have to continue to, I guess, fight that good fight, providing that diverse programming that we have, which I think is great. It definitely makes our nightlife really, really awesome. So hopefully that kind of answers your question and adds some of those resources we have there. And I know we got to wrap up, but this person over here has been trying to ask a question for a minute. You've been engaged. I want to give you the last question, if you don't mind, because I know you was raising your hand and we were missing you and people over here. Imani, not to steal your thunder, but
I appreciate it. I was wondering how much of your efforts are focused on allowing people to enjoy the nighttime that aren't necessarily participating in the economy. And for example, they want to use the parks, or they're just kind of navigating the nighttime to maybe get home to go to bed.
Yeah, I mean, a large part of it, again, as I said when I opened up, the biggest, shiniest thing about the role is nightlife, right? Because again, most cities don't support their nightlife in the way we're doing. So everybody's always like, what about the bars, the clubs, either good, bad, indifferent, whatever you're doing. But again, a robust city that's going to be competitive is a city where you can go to the park in the middle of the night and just exist. Just take a moment, just breathe. A walkable city, which, we're, again, for the, I think, 5th year in a row, most walkable city in America. And I love that as a thing, but are we also that at night? Are we also that when you want to go across the street to the park and relax and decompress and having those spaces? And then I think the other thing I'll point out that you bring up that expands your question a little bit is that we are big advocates of non-alcohol driven cultural spaces being open at night as well. Museums and libraries and bookstores being open this night. Because it's not all about drinking. And so we advocate for that all the time. We talk with our cultural assets, our museums. We're talking about doing later theater shows, right? Instead of the ones that, doing a midnight theater show. And we actually met with the Theater Association. I'm talking about what are the plans and how can we support those things? And so I think that's a robust nighttime economy. It's not all about alcohol, and especially, I don't know how everybody here, but Gen Z is not drinking. So, it's like, it's bad if you're dependent on alcohol to keep your nightlife going right now. Hopefully that answered your question. Yeah.
Sort of a follow-up on that. You were talking a lot about the European countries, and one thing I noticed is I feel like they have a much better grasp on actually embracing nighttime aesthetically, and I feel like in America we try to kind of like daytimeize it. Like we want to make it as bright as possible, and it's, like white light, bright, every corner is lit, but at the same time I feel like we miss out on a lot of the sexiness of the nighttime. And I'm wondering if there's anything.
It's always a little sexy to the nighttime, right?
We have some dark areas.
Yeah.
How do you balance that with safety? And are you working with any kind of types of design guidelines or anything like that?
Yeah, I can answer that anecdotally. Not that there's a formal program in that aspect, but just from my own personal experience and having those conversations is that we're fortunate in Philly to be shielded against some of that, because a lot of that comes from cars. You got to see to drive. So like a lot of our lights are to brighten up dark spots because we're driving and not necessarily walking. And of course, America, and if you ever talk to anybody in Europe, they think we are obsessed with our cars. But we've built most of our cities outside of the East Coast, and particularly here, based on the car, right? Where Philly, we're fortunate enough that we are more shaped like a European city. And even when I talk to my city counterparts and we're trying to solve simple problems, well, not simple, sometimes they're complex, or we make them complex because we're looking at, how did Atlanta solve that? How did Houston solve that? How did we are no way, shape, form built like Atlanta, Houston, or LA. You know who we are built like? Madrid, Copenhagen, and Liverpool. You know, like that's who we're built to like. And we have to look at some of those things that they do, especially when it comes to lighting. One of the things that I love that they do very well in Europe, and I would love to bring here, is the promenading, right? If you've ever been to Europe, a lot of their cities at night have ballasts that come up. They get rid of the car. They're bricked over from, however, and they light it in a way that is a pedestrian promenade. During the day you go, cars are going, deliveries are going, but at night they promenade the street. And I think that's something that we could adopt here in the city of Philadelphia. No plans, nothing in the works. This is me just talking in my pie in the sky stuff. But those are the things I see when I'm traveling. Like, why aren't we doing more of the things that they're doing over there? And, particularly there. But then also, I have been in many meetings where parking is one of the most important subjects in the world in the city. So, listen, I thank you guys so much for having me. Appreciate it. I hope you learned something tonight.
I have a list of questions and everyone asked the questions.
Awesome.
Yeah, thank you. This was wonderful. Really appreciate it. One more round of applause.
Thank you.
I'm going to put this last slide up, so if you haven't yet, I don't know where my slide exchanger went, but I'll turn it on. Hit that QR code, April 2nd, we're on Zoom, is our next meeting. And beyond that, May 13th, put it in your calendars. It's not on our website yet. We're going to be at the new VIA, which is the old Hamilton Hall on Broad Street, talking about the South Broad revitalization project that they're working on to upgrade South Broad. So April 2nd, sign up for that. You need that. You need to sign up to get to Zoom. And then May 13th, we'll be down on Broad Street. Thank you.